The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
The force of that water was so insane. Nobody could get into it.
A horrific holiday weekend in Texas as the death toll rises following generational flash flooding. What the White House says about the preparations and alerts before the flooding began. Plus, tariff decision delayed. The president is pushing back his deadline to some countries, while others are hit with additional penalties. Why this trade policy could help U.S. allies as much as the U.S. And then a Ram recall. Why one of America's most trusted truck brands is warning its drivers of a potential crash hazard. This is the National News Desk, America's News. Now, I'm Dee Dee Gatton. This Monday, we begin with breaking news out of Texas. The death toll following flash flooding over the holiday weekend has now exceeded 90 people, including more than 24 campers and counselors from an all-girls Christian camp in Kerr County. Search and rescue missions continue with as many as 31 still missing. More heavy rain passed through the area earlier today. It could last through tomorrow. The governor warning of additional heavy rain lasting through Tuesday. Yesterday, President Trump signed a disaster declaration. Officials say search and rescue efforts are ongoing. As of this morning, crews had recovered 75 bodies, while at least 7 more are confirmed dead and several more are missing in Travis County near Austin. The National News Desk, Farrah Walton, has more on what the community there says they need most.
Here in the Sandy Creek community, neighbors are picking up the pieces of what used to be their homes and searching for answers after this weekend's deadly flash flooding. Right now, crews are still searching for those missing as families hold on to hope.
I woke up around midnight and I was watching the weather on the television and watching for the alerts.
Entire homes getting swept off their foundation, asphalt crumbling on bridges, and cars and trees. These are just some of the sights along Sandy Creek.
When I got here, I couldn't believe it. This is just incredible, the flooding that's gone on here.
Robin Bates says they've had floods before, but nothing like this.
The water started, it was up here, and it started crossing my driveway to where I couldn't drive out of my driveway.
She says when she came back after evacuating, there were 2 houses that had crashed into her home.
There were people trapped in the house.
Bates says one person got thrown out and was holding onto one of these porch pillars, saving her from getting swept away in the floodwaters and down the creek.
I'm just thankful we're alive, and I know it will sink in over time.
Neighbors are now focused on what's next.
As far as the cleanup that goes on around here, they're going to have to bring in some heavy equipment. It could take months.
People have been showing up and saying, how can I help? So it's really a fine thing to see people coming together and helping.
And as the search for those missing continues, the cleanup now begins with neighbors checking on each other and trying to salvage what they can. People we spoke with here say they're in dire need of water, boxes, and boots on the ground to help with search and rescue efforts. Reporting in Sandy Creek, I'm Farrah Walton.
The White House is pushing back on the suggestion that cuts under the Trump administration may have impacted the federal response to that deadly flash flooding in Texas. The administration previously made cuts to the National Weather Service staff as part of its efforts to shrink the federal workforce. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer calling for an investigation into whether shortages at the agency contributed to deaths during that flooding. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt accusing Schumer of spreading falsehoods.
On July 3rd, the National Weather Service office in Austin, San Antonio, Texas, conducted forecast briefings for emergency management in the morning and issued a flood watch in the early afternoon. Flash flood warnings were also issued on the night of July 3rd and in the early morning of July 4th, giving preliminary lead times of more than 3 hours before flash flooding conditions occurred.
Leavitt says this is a national tragedy and the Trump administration is treating it as such. She adds the White House is currently arranging travel plans for President Trump to visit the area. It is tentatively set for Friday. Stay with us as we continue to track developments on this heartbreaking story throughout the night. We'll have coverage for you both on air and online at thenationaldesk.com. Chantel is moving northeast Northeast through the mid-Atlantic after bringing heavy rain and flooding to North Carolina. Chantel came ashore as a tropical storm in South Carolina yesterday. It is now a post-tropical cyclone. Forecasters say it will continue to bring heavy rain to parts of Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. Flash flooding is possible, especially in urban areas. Life-threatening surf and rip current conditions are expected along parts of the East Coast for the next day or so. Here is a live look at the White House, where within the next half hour, President Trump will meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for the third time this year. This time, Netanyahu comes as negotiations for an end of the Hamas-Israel war reaches a third round of negotiations in Qatar. Hamas received the offer positively last week, but mediators are still discussing final provisions. There is optimism, though. A deal within the next few days could be agreed to. According to a copy of the ceasefire proposal obtained by the Associated Press, here is what it might include. A long list right here. A 60-day halt in fighting, the release of 10 living hostages and the remains of 18, the release of an unspecified number of prisoners detained or arrested by Israel, the ramping up of aid entering Gaza by the United Nations, and a buffer zone along Gaza's borders. Both Israel and Hamas are then supposed to start negotiating a permanent end to the war. President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu are also expected to talk about Iran. Meantime, Israel has struck Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels once again with airstrikes at Houthi ports. These attacks came after the Houthis claimed responsibility for an attack on a ship with a Greek flag in the Red Sea over the weekend. The Houthis say that ship has sunk. This is the first attack in the Red Sea since Trump announced a truce this spring. It is reigniting fears that the Houthis are starting another campaign against shipping that could draw U.S. and Western forces back to the region. A 27-year-old man identified as Ryan Luis Mosquera has been killed after shooting at a U.S. Border Patrol facility in McAllen, Texas this morning. According to the McAllen police chief, the suspect was armed with a rifle and was carrying a utility vest when he opened fire at the entrance of the Border Patrol sector annex. 2 officers and a Border Patrol employee were hurt, including one who was shot in the knee. Border Czar Tom Homan blames rhetoric against ICE agents for the shooting, which he says is making the job more dangerous.
The rhetoric against the men and women of ICE is skyrocketing, especially by members of Congress. We have senators, we have Congress people that compare ICE to the Nazis, compare ICE to racists. And it just continues. So the public thinks, well, if a member of Congress can attack ICE, why can't we? So the rhetoric has to stop.
A Maryland judge has ordered the Department of Justice to testify before the court their exact plans for Kilmar Abrego Garcia if he is permitted bond to be released from custody while awaiting trial. Prosecutors told the judge today their plan is to deport him again to a third-party country if he is released, but did not say to where. The judge said that she ordered Garcia to be returned to Maryland, where he is a resident, this spring. He is currently being held in Tennessee in a prison there, facing charges of human trafficking. The next hearing will be on Thursday. As the race for New York City's mayor ramps up, critics are digging into Democratic candidate Zohran Mamdani's background. The National News Desk, Kelly Gaskins, joins us from Washington with more on some of the controversial findings.
Few people outside of New York's political circles had heard of 33-year-old Democratic socialist Zohran Mamdani before his stunning upset in the Democratic primary for New York City mayor, where he beat out former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Tonight, we made history.
Critics quickly set out to learn more about the political newcomer.
Nobody really knows who this guy is. I think that's the bottom line. I think the more people learn about him, the more they are concerned.
In social media posts from 2015, Mamdani appears to defend the Yemeni-American al-Qaeda leader Anwar al-Awlaki, while criticizing and questioning the FBI surveillance of al-Awlaki in the aftermath of 9/11. At the time, al-Awlaki served as an imam at a Northern Virginia mosque that 2 of the hijackers had attended. Mamdani's post suggests the FBI surveillance is what, quote, eventually led him to al-Qaeda.
لا تشاور أحدا في قتل الأمريكان.
Do not seek any permission when it comes to the killing of the Americans. fighting the devil doesn't need a religious edict.
Retired FDNY Lieutenant Jim McCaffrey, who lost a brother-in-law in the Twin Tower collapse, telling the New York Post, Mamdani's posts are very offensive to 9/11 victims and their families. Former New York Representative Peter King reportedly saying Mamdani is making excuses and rationalizing al-Awlaki's joining al-Qaeda. He's trying to blame the U.S. for him becoming a terrorist. While Mamdani has a history of controversial comments on an array of topics, he focused his campaign on addressing the increasing cost of living problems for New Yorkers, a strategy even his critics say the country should pay attention to.
He tapped into the same thing that Donald Trump tapped into, which is that people are concerned that the economy is not working for them.
And Didi, a new poll by Gotham Polling and Analytics shows Mamdani currently has a double-digit lead over all other candidates in the race.
Kayla, how do those numbers look for the others in this race?
Well, at the moment, Mamdani is in the lead with 41%, and then right behind him is Andrew Cuomo, the former governor of New York. He's running as an independent, and he's at about 27%. And then in third place at the moment is current incumbent mayor Eric Adams, also running as an independent, but Adams is polling at just 16%. Now, Republican Curtis Sliwa is at just under 10%. Andrew Cuomo, have been trying to get each other to drop out of the race, hoping their supporters will then band together and it might be enough to beat Mamdani. But right now, Didi, neither candidate is budging.
All right, we'll see where the numbers go from here. Live from Washington, D.C., Kayla Gaskins, thank you. A suspect is in custody after a deadly shooting in a South Philadelphia neighborhood early this morning. Police say 3 people were killed and 10 injured by multiple rounds of gunfire. The victims' ages range from 15 to 24. Not clear what led up to the violence. Several people had already been arrested on that same block over the weekend. The bodies of all 7 people missing after a California fireworks warehouse exploded last week have been found, according to Yolo County. The huge fire destroyed the facility. Look right here, northwest of Sacramento. Those flames and smoke, they caused several other fires, in fact, evacuations and power outages. The cause under investigation. The identities of the victims will be made public once families are notified. Thousands of city workers continue to protest in Philly for the 7th day. Negotiations failed between District Council 33 and Philadelphia Mayor Sherrell Parker on Saturday. Parker says the city has offered a historic 13% pay increase over 4 years. The American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees announced the strike last week. District 33 gave a new proposal to the city this afternoon. The two sides are still planning to meet tomorrow to negotiate. Idaho officials who are looking for violent state and federal fugitives are asking for help locating the man accused of murdering his 3 daughters in Washington. The search for Travis Decker intensified after a tip on July 5th. Families saw a man matching his description. That is in Sawtooth National Forest in Idaho. Authorities, though, urge anyone with information to come forward. Coming up, the latest progress on containing California's largest wildfire of the year so far. Then, the U.S. trading partners that were just hit with new tariffs and the announcements that may happen this week. Then, doctors are reporting more cases of kids swallowing batteries. We're back in 90 seconds. Over 1,000 firefighters continue to battle the largest wildfire in California so far this year. According to CAL FIRE, over 80,000 acres have been burned, and the fire is 30% contained. The Madre fire began in Central California last Wednesday. Several areas had evacuation orders, and a major highway remains closed. The cause is under investigation. President Trump is extending his July 9 trade deal deadline until August 1st for most countries. Some countries who have not agreed to new negotiations are seeing new rates being implemented. Steeper tariffs on imports from Japan, South Korea, Malaysia, Kazakhstan, South Africa, Laos, and Myanmar have been announced. Treasury Secretary Besson has indicated that several agreements will be announced in the coming days.
We've seen a lot of positive developments in the right direction, but the administration, the president, and his trade team want to cut the best deals for the American people and the American worker.
Meanwhile, other tariffs are going up. President Trump has announced 10% additional tariffs with no exceptions for countries aligned with BRICS. 5 countries founded Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa group at the annual BRICS summit yesterday. This bloc condemned the taxes but did not specifically call out President Trump. It also includes Indonesia, Egypt, Iran, Ethiopia, and the United Arab Emirates. Tonight, the apparent end to a story many did not expect. The Department of Justice and FBI, in a new memo, state after an exhaustive review into the case of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, they found no evidence of blackmail, no client list, and nothing suspicious surrounding his death. As our Christine Frizzell reports, some simply aren't buying it.
On what really happened with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, it's been political theater from day one.
The list of clients that went to the island has not been made public.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? Probably will be, by the way. Probably.
So if you're able to, you'll be...
Yeah, I'd certainly take a look at it.
In February, conservative influencers given, quote, unclassified binders on the matter at the White House, which mostly contained information already made public. Now the Department of Justice says the curtain has closed, despite this revelation earlier this year.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients? Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review.
Now, Attorney General Pam Bondi's Justice Department says there was no incriminating client list. A new memo states there was also no credible evidence found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals as part of his actions. Also, that Epstein did indeed commit suicide in his jail cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York on August 10, 2019. Echoing other recent statements from the FBI.
You know a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was.
He killed himself.
A lot of people, though, including longtime supporters of President Trump, are pushing back. They're calling the Epstein case one rife with government misconduct and unlawful secrecy, and are angered by this assessment from the Department of Justice.
They said, oh, there's nothing, everything you're concerned about has no basis. And by the way, we're not going to give you the records from which we've drawn that conclusion.
Meanwhile, Elon Musk, who last month deleted a post he made about Donald Trump being in the Epstein files, posted what he calls a pedophile arrest counter. A new chapter in the clash over the Epstein files in a story that appears far from over. I'm Christine Frizzell for the National News Desk.
More than 1 million Ram trucks are being recalled by Stellantis. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration says a brake transmission issue could potentially cause the trucks to roll away. This recall, as you take a look right here, affects Ram trucks from the 2013 to 2018 model years. NHTSA says it has received 6 reports of crashes or fires. As summer really takes hold, these hotter temperatures are a catalyst for kidney stones. But as medical reporter Liz Bonus explains, doctors have new technology to help treat them.
Hey there, everybody. Urologists refer to this time of year where we often get dehydrated as peak kidney stone season. But for those who've struggled with them, this new CVAC system, as it's called, has been quite a game changer.
They found my first kidney stone about 12 years ago.
Marjorie Nadler has had several procedures for kidney stones, but each time
they often couldn't reach all of them or pieces of it. And so whatever was left would continue to grow.
That is, until she was referred to Dr. Matt Love of Ohio's Urology Group. He was one of the first in the world to use this new CVAC system to treat kidney stones as part of early clinical trials.
So this is a newer device that incorporates aspiration and irrigation into a single device scope.
As this animation provided by Calyxo Incorporation shows, with the help of tiny cameras, doctors can use this system to break up the stone. They then use water and a vacuum continuously to clear the stone fragments out of the body.
It's really very delicately sort of carving off the edges and slowly dusting it to very small fragments to allow us to aspirate it.
That means for those such as Marjorie Nadler, after the procedure, Dr. Love can tell her,
now you're 100% stone free, and I can visually confirm that with the scope.
Marjorie says after years of always worrying the stones would come back.
For me, it's a big game changer. Knowing that I don't have stones is just great peace of mind.
Early data shows about 97% stone clearance, as they call it, and they do appear to stay gone. The procedure is covered by medical insurance plans. With your health news, I'm Liz Bonus reporting.
Coming up next, the truth behind growing concerns about the safety of one of America's most popular tourist destinations right after this. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We are taking the pulse of America, and we start in Rhode Island with an uptick in children swallowing button batteries.
They often look like shiny quarters, like this one inside a key fob.
So a lot of times what we've seen is kids go up to their parents and say, "Mom, I swallowed a quarter."
Dr. Purana Baranwal is a pediatric gastroenterologist at Hasbro Children's Hospital in Providence, Rhode Island. In the last year, they've seen about a half dozen cases.
When this happens, this is an emergency.
That's because on the way down, these tiny batteries can cause some pretty severe burns.
They can have trouble breathing, they can have drooling, they can have trouble swallowing, trouble eating, trouble drinking, chest pain, belly pain.
One of the country's most popular tourist destinations, Seattle's Space Needle, is preparing for an influx of visitors. But a new social media video is raising concerns about the safety of its iconic glass floor, showing what appears to be a crack. The PR director says the crack is actually on the protective top layer, and the actual glass underneath remains stable.
Our team makes an assessment kind of from a safety standpoint, but similar to your cell phone. Think about how often you might drop it and it gets a little crack or it gets a little scuff. Once again, that protective piece on top is basically what we're replacing.
She says the scuff plate is replaced twice a year without compromising structural integrity.
9-year-old Chloe Leverett and her brother, 7-year-old Gage Daniel, would have turned 22 and 20 this summer. Their mother, Cheryl Daniel, is honoring their birthday today. The siblings spent their last night at their grandparents' home. This is what was left the next morning after a raging fire tore through the house. Investigators recovered the remains of Bubba and Molly McLaren and even of their pet dog and a bird. But there was no trace of Chloe or Gage.
And I will never give up looking for them.
Cheryl believes someone may have kidnapped Chloe and Gage before leaving her parents for dead and setting the house on fire. But some investigators believe it's possible that the fire burned so hot it disintegrated the remains of the children.
Coming up next year on the National News Desk, the man who's being hailed as a hero for saving dozens of lives during the ongoing flooding disaster in Texas. We'll be right back. In Texas tonight, we are learning about the heroes who have helped save lives during the ongoing flooding disaster. The New York Post reports 26-year-old rescue swimmer Scott Ruskin was on its first rescue mission with the Coast Guard and is being credited as helping save the lives of 165 people. Ruskin told the Post, "I'm just doing a job. This is what I signed up for, and I think that any single Coast Guard rescue swimmer or any single Coast Guard pilot, flight mechanic, whoever it may be, would have done the exact same thing in our situation. That is what we were asked to do, and we are gonna do it." And we are thinking about all the families affected by the tragedy in Texas. We will have continuing updates on rescue operations this evening, as well as a review of Israeli Prime Minister's visit to the White House, expected to begin any minute now. Thank you for watching the National News Desk. I'm Didi Gatton. See you at 10.